Bali, internationally known as the Island of the Gods, has a landscape and a series of rituals and celebrations that attract visitors from all over the world, making Bali the most visited island in Indonesia and one of the most dreamed of in the world. Hello, my name is Lisa Martins. I'm Portuguese, and I've been traveling around the world by my own since 2014. In these 11 years, I have visited more than 600 places in 50 different countries, and right now I'm in Ubud, an island of Indonesia in Southeast Asia between Malaysia and Nova Guinea. Bali is one of my favorite places in the world and one of the places I have visited most often. The last time I was in Bali, I had to flee immediately after an earthquake exactly 7 years ago. On this trip, I decided that I wanted to learn more about how the Balinese people live. And in this video, I want to take you with me on this journey of discovery. I stayed with local families so I could gather as much information as possible and supplement my online research. It turned out to be a very enriching trip that I have to share with you. Let's start with the communication. What language is spoken in Bali? Two languages are spoken on the island of Bali. The local language is Balinese or Bahasa Bali, and the official language is Indonesian or Bahasa Indonesia. In Bali, most people are trilingual. They speak these two languages plus English. Balinese and Indonesian are similar, like Portuguese and Spanish to give an example, but they have many different words. A person who only speaks one of the languages cannot understand the conversation in the other language, but there are words that are the same. Indonesian is the official language and the language they learn at school. Balinese is learned at home, which is why it is called the language of the heart. It is the language of culture, identity, and religious rituals. But the biggest difference between the two languages is that in Balinese there are three levels of formality, depending on whether the situation is more formal or informal, and depending on the social position of the speaker and the person being spoken to. And that brings us to the second topic I want to share with you: Balinese society and the caste system. Bali is the only Hindu island in Indonesia, and as in India, Hinduism brings with it the caste system, that is, the division of the society in different groups. However, the caste system in Bali is quite different from the Indian caste system in its practice and social impact. There are four social groups or four castes. The first, the priestly class. The second, the warrior and royal class. The third, the merchant and administrative class. And the fourth, the commoners, who make up more than 90% of the Balinese population. In Bali, there are no untouchables as in India. The lowest castes, the Sudras, and the higher castes interact freely in the everyday life, in markets, and in modern business. The most important social unit for a Balinese person is not their caste, but their banjar or local community council, which I would call a neighborhood, and their family. Their duties and social position are largely defined by their contribution to their banjar and their extended family. There are different levels in the Balinese language: low, medium, and high, that were traditionally spoken according to the caste of the person being addressed. However, in modern everyday life, low Balinese, Bahasa Bali Keraman, is the most common. This shows how subtle the caste differences are. And what about the arranged marriage? In the past, a form of arranged marriage or elopement was practiced. This involved a man kidnapping a woman, often with her prior knowledge and consent, to force the families to negotiate the marriage. This practice is uncommon today and widely discouraged. Today, the vast majority of Balinese choose their own partners, but family approval is extremely important. The couple formally introduces their partner to the family. Families meet to discuss the marriage, ensure that the backgrounds are compatible, and give their blessing. If a family strongly disapproves of a marriage, it can create significant social problems, but the final decision usually rests with the couple. Let's talk now about economy, about the salaries in Bali. How much does the average local citizen earn? In 2024, the minimum wage in Bali was around 2.7 to 3.1 million Indonesian rupiah, which is equivalent to 165, 190 US dollars. The so-called informal or low-income sector, which comprise the majority of the local workforce, earns between 1.5 and 3 million Indonesian rupee, which is approximately 90 to 180 US dollars. This bracket includes jobs such as street vendors, drivers, small shop employees, rural workers, and entry-level hotel staff such as cleaners, kitchen assistants, etc. Where I am staying, there are a restaurant, and the waitresses earn 2.5 million rupees per month, around 150 US dollars. They work 9 hours a day with 4 days off per month. If they get sick, those days that they don't work are deducted from their days off. If they come from more distant villages and need to sleep at their workplace, they work 11 hours a day, plus 2 extra hours to compensate for the cost of accommodation. This represents a wage of $5 per day, or just over 50 cents per hour. At the second level are qualified local professionals, such as receptionists, junior administrative or creative staff, and qualified hotel staff. At the reception, supervisors, who earn between 4 and 8 million Indonesian rupees, approximately 250 to 500 US dollars a month. Then there are highly skilled local professionals and managers, such as senior hotel or tourism managers, accountants, engineers, IT professionals, marketing managers, etc. These professionals can earn between 10 and 25 million Indonesian rupees, around 600 to 1,500 US dollars. Seniors at large companies may have higher salaries. Although these salaries seem extremely low, the local cost of living for a Balinese family, if they live in their own condominium and eat local food, is also significantly lower than the Western standard. We will talk about these values later. And what about the retirement? There are pensions for the elderly. The concept of retiring at age 65 with a fixed government pension does not exist for the vast majority of Balinese. The safety net for the elderly is a combination of different things. The first is family support. This is the main and most reliable system. Elderly parents almost always live with their children and grandchildren in the family compound. The younger generations provide financial support, food, and care for the elderly. Second, continued work. Many elderly Balinese continue to work in small-scale agriculture or in the small family business known as warung. or in the production of handicrafts, as long as they are physically able to do so. A taxi driver I traveled with the other day told me that these 85 years old parents continue to work their rice fields every day from sunrise to sunset. They produce rice for themselves and their children, making them feel useful and independent. They don't need to work, but it keeps them healthy, younger, and gives them a sense of usefulness and connection with the divine. 3. The community support. The Banjar or local neighborhoods can also provide informal support to elderly members in need. But there are also a pension system, albeit for very few. For that minority who have worked in the formal sector for a registered company and with a contract, there is a social security program that includes a savings benefit for old age, to which both the employee and the employer contribute a percentage of the salary each month. Upon reaching the age of 55, the employee can withdraw these savings, but in a single installment. In other words, there are no lifetime pensions. The government also offers some limited social assistance so that the poorest and elderly can access health care and receive small amounts for basic subsistence. This system, although it seems to impose a burden on the working-age population, is deeply rooted in the cultural values of family and community responsibility, and is normal in Balinese society and families. And how much costs a house for a Balinese family? The cost varies greatly depending on location, size, and materials. The concept of house is also different. A Balinese family usually lives in a walled compound shared by an extended family called Uma, with several small, separate buildings, a kitchen, pavilions with bathroom for sleeping, a family temple, and others. Such a compound in a remote village will cost a fraction of one in a tourist area, especially near the beach. When building these compounds, the land is usually inherited. The main cost is in constructing the structures. A basic, functional compound with simple materials can be built for a surprisingly low cost of around 18,000 to 50,000 US dollars. This is for a local family, using local materials and labor. A more modern, Western-style house can easily cost between 60,000 and 300,000 US dollars or even more, especially if it is in location favored by foreigners. It is important to understand that for most Balinese, property is not bought and sold on an open market in the same way as in the West. Land is an ancestral heritage of great value passed down from generation to generation. Let's talk now about the contributions to Hindu temples. Balinese people always live in communities and are very connected to Hindu temples, contributing both financially and with their labor. I tried to understand what this means for the local economy, and this is what I discovered. The contribution is not a fixed monetary amount, such as tithing, but rather a combination of daily offerings, flexible monetary donations for ceremonies, and mandatory physical labor for the community. The daily offerings, kanang sari, are the most visible daily contribution. Families spend a small amount each day on flowers, rice, and incense to make these small offerings and place them at home, at work, and in temples. When there are a ceremony at a temple, the banjar or priest suggests a voluntary contribution which is not mandatory. but everyone is expected to contribute what they can. It is a social obligation to contribute to their community's temple. For large events or when a temple needs significant repairs, the Banjar may set a specific goal for each family. This goal can be a substantial amount. In addition, wealthier families or successful individuals in the community are expected to contribute more generously. Just as important as money is the contribution of labor. Each member of the Banjar is expected to physically assist in the preparation and performance of temple ceremonies. This community work is an essential part of religious practice. Let's talk now about the history of the country and the island. The history of the colonization of Indonesia is intense, having passed through several hands and disputes. The first Europeans to arrive in the archipelago in the 16th century were the Portuguese, followed by the Spanish, who quickly left with the signing of the Treaty of Zaragoza. The Portuguese left some influences on the archipelago, such as the word secola, which originates from the Portuguese word escola. In the 17th century, the Dutch arrived with much greater ambitions and through force established themselves in Jakarta, the capital, where they remained until the last century. In 1949, when sovereignty was transferred to Indonesia. During this period, Indonesia was not only controlled by the Dutch. There were many disputes with the French, the British, and the Japanese in different battles. During the years of Dutch colonization, the peasants of Java, the capital island, were forced to cede part of their land to the Dutch government for the production of coffee, sugar, and indigo, which generated much wealth for the Dutch and much poverty and hunger for the Javanese. During this period, there were many claimed wars of conquest that reaped many lives. On the other hand, the Dutch began to promote education, irrigation systems, and prosperity among the local population, which, although quite limited, began to create a more literate Indonesian population. They began to form their own political groups, which later led to the independence movement. The history of colonization on Bali Island was quite different. With few spices to offer and considered difficult to conquer, the Dutch's economic interest was in the slave trade. Balinese kings sold criminals, debtors, or even entire communities to the Dutch, keeping them away from control of the islands. However, in the early 20th century, the Dutch invaded northern Bali, which led to the most dramatic part of Bali's history. The Balinese kings and their subjects refused to submit to the Dutch and confronted the Dutch army dressed in their traditional white ceremonial costumes and armed only with ceremonial spears and swords. They marched in front of the Dutch firepower in a horrific ritual of mass suicide called puputan. This put an end to any organized resistance, and in 1998, Bali also became part of the Dutch colony. Even so, the Dutch saw Bali's tourism potential, calling it the last paradise or a living museum, and made efforts to preserve Balinese culture, its art, dance, and Hindu religion and culture. This had a huge impact on Balinese identity and the economy today. Finally, let's talk a little about the geography of Bali. Bali has a tropical climate divided in 2 seasons. the dry season, which runs from April to October, and the rainy season, which runs from November to March. The climate is always warm, with an average temperature of 27 Celsius degrees. Due to its location near the equator, its volcanic soils and its mountainous terrain, its landscape is characterized by dense tropical forests and rice plantations, irrigated by an ancient collective irrigation system called subak, which, due to its efficiency and importance in the social organization of the island, has been named a World Heritage Site by UNESCO. We talk about it in another video in this series, where we explore the rice planting process. The island of the gods, Bali, is also known for its numerous rivers and waterfalls, and for its beaches, with white sand in the south of the island and black sand on the north coast of Bali. I hope you enjoyed this journey through the real life of the people at the famous island of Bali. Thank you for your time, comments, and for subscribing the channel. See you in the next video. Please take care and see you soon.